So the next disaster that we'll be dealing with is that of tsunamis. Now, tsunami is actually a Japanese word where su means harbor and nami means waves. So tsunamis are basically harbor waves. However, their height and the intensity with which they hit any harbor or any coastal area, that makes them a very dangerous type of a disaster. So tsunamis exactly are a series of very long wavelength. In large water bodies, these can be seas, oceans, and even big lakes. And they are caused by any kind of a major disturbance above or below the water surface due to the displacement of a large volume of water. Now, there can be many reasons because of which any tsunami can take place. Some of the reasons include any underwater earthquake, volcanic eruptions under the water, landslides, underwater explosions of any sort, mainly the nuclear tests and test of other explosive ammunitions. And also they have one extraterrestrial cause, that is due to meteorite impacts. When the meteorites, they fall in a water body, they can displace a large amount of water from the surface of the water body, and that can cause tsunamis. Now here in this pie chart, you can clearly see that we have divided the cause and the number of times that cause leads to a tsunami. The earthquakes are the biggest reason for the occurrence of tsunami. You must remember 2004 Indian Ocean tsunami or the 2011 tsunami in Japan. So these were two of the worst tsunamis that the world has experienced, and they were both caused because of earthquakes. Another big cause of tsunamis are landslides, both underwater and land-based. Now what happens if there is a cliff and there is a landslide? There can be a huge displacement of water. Even underwater, if there is a cliff and there is a landslide on that cliff, again there can be a displacement of water which can cause a tsunami. Next, we have the volcanoes. 5% of the total known tsunamis are caused due to volcanoes. Recently, in January 2022, there was a massive volcanic explosion in the Pacific Ocean near the country called Tonga. Now, this volcanic eruption, it caused a tsunami of 15-meter height that hit this particular country. Lastly, we have only 2% of the tsunamis that are caused due to meteorite impacts in the oceans. So how does this energy move through the ocean? How due to any earthquake or volcano or any other kind of impact, the tsunamis are generated? So any sudden release of a large amount of energy creates tsunami. We know that. That has been well established. Now this energy, it leads to the creation of waves. So there is some amount of wave energy that is now present in the ocean. Now in the ocean, out at sea, the energy, the waves, they are moving very uniformly throughout the depth of the ocean. Okay. So the energy is well distributed throughout the depth of the water body. And because of that, the tsunamis are almost undetectable when it comes to the open oceans. Now, as these tsunamis, as they move towards the land, the depth of the ocean or the depth of the water body, it reduces, right? So the depth is reducing. The area that is available to the energy to move around, it reduces. And because of that, there is an increase in the height of these waves that were moving undetectably in the open ocean. So the height of these waves increase, and finally, as they touch the land where the depth of the ocean is the minimum, their height is the maximum, and they hit the land with an extensive force. The whole energy, it gets impacted on the land. And that is why, because of the impact of such a huge amount of energy, there is an extensive damage that is created by these tsunamis. Now, for the tsunamis, it is very essential that there needs to be an early warning system in order to prevent the extensive loss of life and property that these waves can cause. Now, how does this early warning system work? Now, these early warning systems, they basically rely on the seismic data. We know that 75% of all the tsunamis are caused due to earthquakes. Even when it comes to volcanoes, volcanoes are also associated with earthquakes. So it becomes very necessary that we know about the seismic data before predicting that any tsunami can hit a particular place. So the warning systems, they include multiple lines of communications, like sirens, like radio broadcasts and the text messages, so that their information that they are producing, it is sent to all the people, all the stakeholders, including the citizens that live in the possibly impacted area. So we have underwater pressure detectors that sense any quake. This information is sent to a surface buoy. Now these surface buoys, they send this information to a satellite, which then relays the information to the transmitters that are present on the land. And through these transmitters, the information is sent out to all the stakeholders. Now, where are the regions where mostly we experience tsunamis in the world? Now, you know that earthquakes are the major reason for the tsunamis, and because of that, most of the areas that experience a tsunami are located along the earthquake zones of the world. Majorly the earthquake zones surrounding any water body, that is the Ring of Fire. The Pacific Ring of Fire is the most susceptible area where tsunamis can be experienced. You can see here the red regions. They are those which experience a high danger of any tsunami. You can see that along the Pacific Ring of Fire, there is a high risk of experiencing a tsunami as well. Moreover, when we see the alpine belt of the earthquakes, one area surrounding any water body comes here, that is in the Mediterranean Sea Ocean. So we know of two major earthquake zones on the land. One is Pacific Ring of Fire and the second is the Alpine Zone. Now the Pacific Ring of Fire also is highly susceptible to tsunamis, and in the Alpine Zone, the area that surrounds the water body, that is the Mediterranean Sea, it also experiences the danger of tsunamis. So the subduction zones off the coast of Chile, Nicaragua, Mexico and Indonesia, they have created killer tsunamis. So this area. Also the Pacific, that is the Pacific Ring of Fire region, amongst all the oceans has experienced the greatest number of tsunamis. Since the year 1990, that is 790 tsunamis have occurred in the Pacific Ocean alone since the year 1990, that is in the past 3 decades. We know that in the year 2004, India was hit by almost a 30-meter tall tsunami on its eastern coast. So the eastern coast of India is highly susceptible towards tsunami. Why? Because the tsunamis that are generated in the Pacific Ocean area, they can reach the eastern coast of India. Moreover, the eastern part of India, mainly the Andaman and Nicobar Island area, also experiences the earthquakes. It also belongs to the alpine belt of earthquakes. So earthquakes can occur over there and they can also release enough energy for creation of a tsunami. So that makes our whole eastern coast very susceptible towards tsunamis. So what are the impacts that are caused due to any tsunami disaster? There is a huge loss of life and a loss of infrastructure and property of the people. There is a degradation of the natural resources. Why? Because there is an intrusion of salt water up to a long distances from the coast. There is a loss of livelihood, not just for the fishermen who were working in that area, but also for the farmers who were working in slightly inland areas because of the height of these waves and the amount of area that they can cover because of these heights and the amount of energy that is stored in them. There is also an ecological impact. The ecology of the area is highly disturbed because of these tsunamis. An example here is during the 2004 tsunami of the Indian Ocean, almost 30% of the corals were lost. These corals that were present in the Indian Ocean in the eastern part, they were lost. And it was estimated that it will take almost a decade to ensure that these corals, they can be rejuvenated. So there is an extensive ecological impact as well of these tsunamis. So we have loss of life, loss of property, loss of livelihoods, degradation of the natural resources due to intrusion of salt water, and finally, ecological impact both on land as well as on the ocean. Let us now take a look at the tsunami early warning system that has been put in place in the Indian Ocean region to ensure that proper warning can be given to the people in case any event like the 2004 tsunami comes again. So this system was established in the year 2007, just 3 years after 2004 tsunami, and it is operated by INCOIS in Hyderabad. That is the Indian National Center for Ocean Information Services. Now, it comprises of a real-time network of seismic stations. We read that seismic stations are a very important part of early warning systems because most of the tsunamis, they have their cause as earthquakes. Then there are many tide gauges that are present under the water and a 24/7 operational tsunami warning system that gives out the information regarding or any warning regarding the tsunamis to all the stakeholders. So these seismic stations and gauges, they detect the tsunamigenic earthquakes and they monitor whether they can cause any tsunami. Now the information from the INCOIS is sent to the Ministry of Home Affairs plus to the Secretary of the Ministry of Earth Sciences. Finally, it is the Ministry of Home Affairs who finally releases these warnings to the public. Now, the Indian Ocean Tsunami Warning System is the second most efficient tsunami warning system of the world after that of Japan. And it can provide warning within 10 to 20 minutes after any earthquake has occurred. The Intergovernmental Oceanic Commission, that is IOC, that is under UNESCO, it has accredited the Indian Tsunami Warning System as the tsunami service provider. So we will be providing the tsunami warnings for 28 countries in the Indian Ocean Rim region, along with Indonesia and Australia. So this was done in the year 2011. Now, what are the various components of the Indian early warning system? So we have the various detectors that are present either on the surface of the ocean or under the surface of the ocean. So we have the various tide gauge networks that work in a real time. They provide real time information to the tsunami warning system. We have the Upper Ocean Surface Meteorological and Oceanic Observation Centers. We have 12 bottom pressure recorders in the tsunami-genic zones. What are tsunami-genic zones? These are those zones where if earthquakes occur, there is a high possibility for a tsunami to occur as well. We have radar-based coastal monitoring stations. And we have a network of land-based seismic stations. Okay, so these are based on land, that is coastal and other land-based stations. We have tide gauge network, we have upper surface and surface ocean information centers, and finally bottom pressure recorders. So these are the 5 components and they provide their data through the INSAT to the tsunami warning system. So data communication, it occurs through INSAT. Then on the basis of historical data, bathymetry, coastal topography and the coastal vulnerability, and this information is analyzed. And finally, it is determined whether a tsunami will occur or whether a simple storm surge will occur. And all this information is finally sent out through warnings to the various stakeholders. We know that it is first sent to MHA plus the Secretary of Ministry of Earth Science, and then finally MHA gives the nod ahead to the tsunami warning system to disperse this information to the entire stakeholders, entire public. Apart from this, there are also various programs that are being run by the Center for Capacity Building, Training and Education of the various stakeholders, specifically those which are involved in rescue and relief operations. So this is our entire early warning systems that is present for the tsunami risk. Now, how can this tsunami risk be managed? Now, we know that we have an early warning system. So the early warning system occurs, and because of which the loss of life can be prevented. But there still is a lot of infrastructure that is present on the coastal regions. So how do we manage that kind of a risk? First of all, there is a need for natural buffers. We know that mangroves, they act as a natural buffer against any kind of storm surges or tsunamis. They reduce the impact of these oceanic events over the land. So mangroves, in fact, according to a study in the journal Science, that the areas which had the mangrove plantations around them, they were much less impacted by the 2004 tsunami compared to the areas which did not have any kind of vegetation along them. Next, there is a need for land use planning. We need to have a risk analysis of all the coastal areas in the country, and based on that risk analysis, the proper mapping, that is zonal mapping, needs to be done, and according to this zonal mapping, it should be allowed whether a particular type of infrastructure should be created in that area or not. Then we can have a construction of embankments and barriers, that is on the coastal regions, various barriers can be created against any impact of an event like a tsunami or storm surges. Next, tsunami shelters should be created so that the people who have been evacuated from the coastal regions because of the early warnings, they can have a place to live. Finally, proper insurance should be promoted amongst the people regarding their lives and the property. Even the government should ensure that their critical infrastructure is properly ensured against any such events, because this will prevent a delay in the recovery and rehabilitation of the people and of the essential services. Now that is all about tsunami as a disaster. There was a PYQ that was asked in the year 2017 for 15 marks. Let us take a look at that question. On December 2004, tsunami brought havoc on 14 countries including India. Discuss the factors responsible for occurrence of tsunami and its effect on life and economy. In the light of guidelines of NDMA given in the year 2010, describe the mechanisms for preparedness to reduce the risk during such events. So in this question, you'll start with the introduction where you can give a description about the 2004 tsunami. It was one of the worst disasters of the decade to hit the country, which led to the death of more than 12,000 people, apart from the destruction for a large amount of infrastructure as well as the ecological impact. In the body portion, you will deal with all the questions that have been asked. First is discuss the factors responsible for the occurrence. In the factors, you can say there can be many factors which can cause a huge amount of displacement of water in any water body. You can talk about earthquakes, volcanoes. You can also mention that almost 75% of these tsunamis are caused due to earthquakes. Then you can also tell about landslides, both above water and underwater. Then extraterrestrial meteorite impacts. So you can talk about all these causes. Then you have to talk about the effects. In effects, you can talk about loss of life, property, livelihoods. In livelihood, you can talk about both the farmers and the fishermen, and impact on the critical infrastructure. Like markets get closed, and because of that, a lot of people, they are not able to get their livelihoods. Then you have to talk about the various preparedness measures that have been mentioned under the NDMA guidelines of the year 2010. So these NDMA guidelines, they talk about various risk management options. First of all, they talk about the early warning systems. There should be a proper and quick early warning system that needs to be established so that the people can be alerted beforehand regarding their evacuation from a particular place that can be impacted. And it should also be ensured that the vulnerable communities, they are properly informed about the risks of tsunamis by the early warning systems. Second, we need to take up various structural measures. It includes proper zonation, proper construction measures that need to be taken place for any infrastructure that has to be constructed in a tsunami area. Third, we'll talk about other measures like creation of bioshields, that is, plantation of mangroves and other vegetation along the coastal areas to prevent the impact or to reduce the impact of any tsunami activity. We'll talk about community involvement in any such event so that not only all these three can be fulfilled, but also we can get the traditional knowledge from the communities that have been living in that particular place for centuries to prevent, and what all steps they are taking to prevent themselves from any such events. We know about various tribes in Andaman and Nicobar Islands which assess that a tsunami is coming and they went to the higher lands before the tsunami even hit that particular place. So we need to respect and take an account of such kind of a traditional knowledge to ensure that the impact of any hazard is not very high. In the conclusion, you can mention that India took many lessons from the 2004 tsunami and we set up one of the world's best early warning system for tsunami. The NDMA guidelines are also being put into place and so that it can be ensured that any future event of tsunami does not create such a adverse impact on India as it was done during 2004.